Space Games here.
Hey, this is Ben Wheeler, and I'm joined today with Cirsova, and we're going to be talking about the Wild Stars Indiegogo campaign, which looks absolutely fantastic. Link in the description below. And we'll just, talk about Cirsova and all the awesome stories they put out all the time and everything else in between. How are you doing today, Cirsova?
Hey, I'm doing all right, and I just got the live video paused. Sorry about that if there was any echo.
It's all right. I didn't hear a thing, and I don't think anyone else did either. Um, Let's see here. So tell us about Wild Stars. This is kind of a new thing, but apparently it's been going on for 35 years. Give us a good description there.
All right. The premise of the Wild Stars is that 75,000 years ago, a being from another universe led mankind on an exodus from Earth to the stars. It was the time of the fall of Atlantis and previous visits of supposed extraterrestrials, divine intervention, etc., have been the results of those who went to the wild stars checking back on Earth or their enemies hoping to gain a foothold on the original planet from which mankind came. It is a huge scale story that, like I said, covers tens of thousands of years. It is along the lines of Gardner F. Fox's sort of kitchen sink pulp adventures that he would write for Planet Stories, and it's on the scale of something akin to a Jack Kirby Fourth World.
Very fun. What?
Yeah,
It reminds me a lot of the sort of the stuff the Pulp Rev guys and Superversive starting to come up with, where
yeah,
we're not so much worried about the hard sci-fi, which has been a real dominant force for the last, I don't know, 50 years or so. Um, just pulling it out of my head, like
yeah.
don't think too hard on that.
Well,
And like I'm writing something where it's a gigantic metaphor for the food industry, but it's also got alien sword fighting to the death. And because I'm looking at some of the pictures here, I got all kinds of crazy aliens with spears. We have StarQuest coming up. We have um, David Halquist's, uh, you know, Terror for Mars. Uh, Okay, there we go. I'm ahead of myself now. I just drank a little bit of Monster on a full stomach. You don't know what this stuff does to me. We have David Halquist, Terror for Mars, and we, of course, have the Cirsova magazine continuing to pump out such fine looking quality. So, Wildstar seems to have quite a bit around it. The covers and the pictures here are absolutely fantastic. Um, where does one begin?
well, uh, one of the best places to begin is at the beginning. Wildstar's Book of Circles, which is Wildstar's 1 for all intents and purposes of this 4 volume set that we have coming out, is a collection of the 1984, the 1988, and the 2001 through 2002 comic runs of Wild Stars. Now, you were talking earlier about the pulp revolution. In the 1970s, there was something of a pulp revolution going on in its own time where there was a resurgence of interest in the sort of Burroughsian and Howardian fantasy and science fiction stuff. And this actually came out of that. In the 1970s, Michael had written some science fiction novels. They ended up going unsold, so he underwent the task of converting them to comic books to retell the stories of those novels in comic forms in the 80s during the comic boom when he was starting to make some headway as a comic retailer during the peak years in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first two issues of the comic, Ehrlich and First Marker, those were entirely self-done. He did the art, he did the inking, he did on First Marker, he even printed it himself.
Wow.
And those retold a couple of the stories that he wrote from the 70s. And around 2000, he hired some professional artists. You mentioned the quality of the art. He hired Frank Brunner, who I'm sure a bunch of people are familiar with. If you're not, look up his stuff. It's fantastic. He did the cover art for those and did some of the concept art that he worked up with Michael based on some of Michael's designs. And Dave, having name fade here. David Brewer, who worked on Cable and Deadpool, and Dave Simons, who worked on Ghost Rider, did the interior art for those comics from 2001 through 2002. And the Book of Circles, which is Wild Stars Volume 1, puts those in chronological order. So you have the prologue, which sort of explains some of the backstory and the setting of what's going on, what leads up to the events of the first Wild Stars comics. And then it goes back to the stories from the 1980s, and then to the Wild Stars comics that build on those stories. So if you want to get into the world, that's probably a good place to start, because it introduces you to the concepts, the characters, and because it's a graphic novel, it's a little less dense, it's easier to get through, but there is still a lot going on in that book.
It does, and like all these images of a guy using some sort of thing on I don't know, it reminds me of those old Mesmer things comic villains
Yeah.
used to have on
So
a shark.
what's going on in that picture is one of the heroes, Ehrlich, who's the immortal son of a being who came from another universe to lead mankind on the exodus to the stars. He is capturing a giant megalodon shark, which gets turned into a giant spaceship that goes around hunting and destroying the spaceships of an alien race called the Brothan, who are the inspiration for werewolves. In the setting, people got the primitive idea of werewolves because of this wolf alien race who were one of the ancient enemies of mankind and enemies of the wild stars. So you literally have a giant space shark going around tearing up their spaceships, keeping them from being able to launch invasions against Earth.
Absolutely outstanding. I'm sold on the concept of a giant shark floating and swimming around space and devouring the enemies of mankind. Such as it is, surely there is a place in heaven for such a shark. I love the spirit of these things. So there's the comic books, but the novels, I'm kind of more of a novel guy.
Yeah.
I'd probably be more popular if I got into that the comic stuff drama, but uh, yeah. But it's about the novels. Where should one begin?
Well, with the novels, the first novel is a direct sequel to the graphic novels, because
Ah,
Michael was working on expanding the story through comics, but ended up deciding to expand the comic into a full-length novel. So in Wild Stars 2 Force Majeure, you have about an 80,000 word novel, and it wraps around 38 pages of comics that serve as a couple of the chapters.
mm,
And what happens in Wild Stars 2 plays into what happens in Wild Stars 4. We kind of get back to it. Wild Stars 4, I've joked, is a good place to start, sort of a machete order. You could start by reading the first half of Wild Stars 4, because Wild Stars 4 actually goes back to the beginning. At that moment 75,000 years ago, right as Atlantis falls, right as mankind is being led on an exodus to the stars. And the protagonist of that is actually a sailor on the ancient prehistoric seas. And the reason that they have to go on the exodus is because if you go to the Indiegogo page, you'll see these fishmen with spears.
Mm-hmm.
A race of aliens has sent a space probe, a giant trident, which spurs the evolution on planets to make them more hospitable to their inhabitation and facilitate takeover. So a race of evil alien fishmen sent a giant spear to Earth. Fishmen are rising up out of the ocean, threatening mankind. Mankind has got to go on an exodus to the stars because fishmen are going to destroy Atlantis. All of technology is going to be lost, etc., etc. Part of Wild Stars 2 is what happened to the Trident after it was lost. Somehow the Trident ends up on Mars. It ends up in the hands of intelligent telepathic space dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
That is pretty wild. It's like if you give those dinosaurs psychic powers, they'll finally overcome their one weakness, the T-Rex's tiny, tiny hands.
Yeah.
But we can't have that, surely. I've seen a whole bunch of crazy images. I put up an image of the Fishman here because I realized, wait a minute, Chrome is a Google product and will thus let me show images on it. As well as it looks like a picture of a woman psychically battling a T-Rex. All kinds of crazy awesome stuff, which is what I like to hear, what I like to see. I'm certainly probably going to pick up the Wild Star Volume 4, since it does have a bit of the origin story,
Yeah.
and maybe one of the comics, the first one anyway, to see if I like it, of course.
Yeah.
It's not like these things can't be bought again in the future, but to support the Indiegogo campaign, what a joy. There's nothing I love better than seeing one of our own send out the flare like that. What is it? Is this a guy? Yeah, that's right. He is a guy with a handgun shooting at dinosaurs. I'm going to put that up for everybody. That's just a joy.
Space dinosaurs.
Space dinosaurs.
Yeah, one of the things about Wild Stars is there's so much going on, so many cool things that it's hard to pitch just one aspect of it. Because, I told you about the Spacemen, Ancient Earth, all that stuff about Wild Stars 4. Well, all of the plans that have been laid through the previous 3 Wild Stars books are being set in motion because the being from another universe who led the Exodus has sent all these time travel threads, planning carefully and making sure that everything will happen just so that he can rescue his beloved from a crystal prison inside of a supermassive black hole. And he has to go back in time to write after the Exodus 75,000 years ago to find the sailor who can help him navigate the spaceship to the heart of the black hole, which is kind of why I talk about the machete order, because Wild Star Rising is a prequel and a sequel, because it goes back to those first days, the earliest points in the timeline, and it goes forward where you have the protagonist who's brought back basically from the beginning of history to help the characters who've been on the crazy science fiction adventures in the previous books to accomplish their goal. And there's a beautiful princess inside of a black hole prison, an evil god and cultists who are waiting with a baited trap. It's high adventure, space opera of the finest caliber. It's crazy. It's nuts. There's no other way to describe it. It's amazing.
I
I can
absolutely.
honestly say there's nothing else like it out there.
Oh yes, and it's honestly stuff we need more of. This stuff has full of that verve, that high spirit that makes literature such a joy, and not anything dreary, and not worth the time or lunch hour it takes to read it. Um, there's it's maybe these sort of things come every 30 or 40 years when the I don't know, the market or so gets stale, get everyone excited, until eventually people ruin it. But I simply can't wait to read it, and support the Indiegogo. It looks like it's 1/4 of the way there, with a flexible goal.
Yeah.
So
We're working really, really hard on this. We really got to do this. It's been kind of a slow start, actually, for us compared to some of our stuff in the past. And I think part of it could be our move from Kickstarter to Indiegogo. But one of the issues that we had with Kickstarter was there are so many crazy tiers that you have to build to make sure people can get all of the items they wanted. Whereas with Indiegogo, you can just pick and choose what things you want. It doesn't have a cart functionality, which would be great, but you could still go and say, all right, I only want the new Wild Stars because I bought Wild Stars 3 last time, so you can buy that. Or you could say, I bought Wild Stars 3 last time, but I got the comics, so I have all the stuff in Volume 1, but I never got a chance to get Volume 2. So that way you could just buy Wild Stars 4 and then buy Wild Stars 2. And
right.
that's something that you just would have been completely impossible with Kickstarter.
I getcha. And Indiegogo does have that creative spark to it, when it comes to making your tiers and everything. Woolly Ram says, "When the stars align and the muses awaken, there shall be pulp." Absolutely. And also, I think that perhaps Indiegogo's stay has soured compared to what it used to be, especially with the alt hero Q debacle, and just sort of the whole chaos
Yeah.
that shows up. It's like, we've got a rabid fan base that'll that's really pouring money into it. We'll kick them out, and it's like, and now it's unfortunately, not exactly beneficial for creators like yourself.
Yeah.
Though perhaps will we see a Kickstarter campaign later on, or are you just going to stick with
Uh,
Indiegogo?
I don't know. Right now, I'm entirely focused on Wild Stars, trying to get this pulled together. Any future projects we have really hinge on the success of this, because this is something we're sinking a lot of time, money, resources into, and what we're able to do going forward will be influenced strongly by how well this does.
I get you.
And as for issues with the platforms, yeah, we've had some people say we can't support on Indiegogo. We've had people who say we can't support Kickstarter. It's We're not really happy with one of the reasons when we weren't happy with Kickstarter even before Wild Stars was they allegedly handed over communications with Richard Meyer about his Jawbreakers campaign being blocked. They handed that over to some guy on Twitter supposedly
Huh.
and leaked it. And of course, with Indiegogo, you have the Chuck Dixon thing, getting the rug pulled out from under it even after payment has been processed and the campaign had been completed. So it came down to a platform by an evil corporation that did not meet our technical needs versus a platform from an evil corporation that did meet our technical needs. And people who refuse to buy it on either platform will have opportunities, hopefully in the future, to buy it from some other evil corporate retailer like Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
I mean, why not pick and choose our overlords?
Yeah.
I'm more of a I'm more of a Thanos guy, not a Darkseid guy. I see what Darkseid can offer the galaxy, but really, in my heart of hearts, I got to go with my purple Malthusian here. Um, Thanos, has nobody told you that Malthus is a debunked economic policy? No. Um, that would be a fun debate. Trying to get president of the universe. And you're absolutely right. I'm being funny about it. But as Wooly Ram says right here, we live in a cyberpunk dystopia without all the cool cybernetics. We're getting there, though. There was that girl with those adorable black cyborg hands of hers, nice and shiny and chrome. There are no clean choices. It's like one of those things. While I'm checking my finances to make sure that I can put some money where my mouth is. It's like PayPal hasn't even, like, I paid some guy for this card game I play, and it's like PayPal hasn't even updated everything yet, and it's like, thank you PayPal for you know um, putting for delaying everything for
Yeah.
this and that, and uh, you know. Mm, we just got to make do with it. But if they ask us, if they ask us to bow towards a graven image and say "Hail Zuckerberg" 7 times, I think we can all agree to draw the line there. Perhaps. Um,
Perhaps.
I got to get my Monster Girl pictures, man. I just gotta. So let's see here. So we've talked about the Indiegogo campaign. Um, so I see here with the tiers, we've unlocked the Wild Stars first comics. Then the next one is, are these first edition? Are these like new covers?
Yeah, yeah. Let me pull this up here so I know that I'm looking at the right thing. Uh, we did put out Wild Stars 3 last year. It was a Kickstarter exclusive. We only printed up as many copies as the Kickstarter needed, plus a small handful for Michael's store. But this new edition has a new cover. It's got 2 of the stories that Michael's published in Cirsova that tie into the Wild Stars universe, plus a previously unpublished short story. The covers are part of a interlocking set. The back covers actually interlock to make a big picture. We haven't shown those yet. We are going to make a small reserve stock of Wild Stars 3 from last year available to anybody who wants them, but right now our big focus is the new editions.
I getcha, and probably as it should be.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I'm just gonna change up the image real quick. There we go. Should be the shark now. I can see that. It's always difficult in this time when we're sort of in between the whole print media dying and the Amazon algorithm.
Yeah.
Uh, I know YouTube's algorithm has gone crazy recently, to the point where you really just have to build up. Like I adopt 4chan's motto for a lot of things. I do it for free. Um,
Yeah.
if we make money on this or anything, I'll go to Jason, my publisher, and go, Jason, cover X, Y, and Z costs. Okay. It's I'm not, you know, that's what my real job is for. But this is a pleasure. I mean, after this, I'm going to be doing editing through Vellum on one of my books. But the thing is like I'm seeing the picture that looks like, what is it, Fade Ralpha? He looks like the I'm looking at the image of the people sword fighting, and there's like some guy who looks like a slightly spacefaring Conan the Barbarian with that long hair and everything like that. Looks like Arnold, and he's dueling what looks like. Do you remember that Dune uh, movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy with the white hair, Fade Ralpha.
Yeah.
Like uh, he looks exactly like Fade Ralpha. I don't
I
know.
mean, Mark Wheatley could have used those as for inspiration for the designs, certainly.
Oh
I
yeah.
know that he does a lot of reference work. Like you can see on the cover where he for the space squid cover where he used a spider's head on a squid body. So you
Oh,
get a spider-headed squid wrapped around a spaceship that it's tearing apart coming through a wormhole.
I actually want that as a poster. Like this and the other thing. Ooh, very fine. Look, they're going to look good on the wall.
Well, we'll see about getting that as a poster. We're planning on including art prints of both the Red Grief and the sword fight that we'll
Mm-hmm.
be giving away to anybody who's buying print copies of the books. But yeah, we could look into doing posters of the space squid.
It just looks so good. Is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah,
And
that's why
these days,
on the hardcover we decided, all right, we're putting this on the wraparound hardcover dust jacket, no words, no nothing. So
I absolutely agree with you for a lot of it.
yeah,
Just because it's like, might as well. I like if you and it actually like I'm gonna pull this up now.
yeah, I think we've
If
got maybe 10 left of the hardcover that we'll make available if we hit that 5,000 mark.
a hardcover of what? Which one?
Uh, Wild Stars 3, the hardcover with the space squid art.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, because that was
Excellent.
from the limited hardcover that we did last year.
Right. No, I get you. So Time War Mageddon, uh, variant hardcover. I like it. Well, I was just looking at the design here. It's actually like pretty good, where you can have the head of the space spider squid on one end, and then the sort of tail and stuff like that. And even if you did decide to put words, there's plenty of space at the bottom and plenty of space on the side for text. Um, that just again, it's aesthetic. It pleases the eye, which is more than what a lot of covers do these days. I'm gonna kind of go on a rant real quick. uh, I hate covers with real people on them if it is not a romance. I absolutely hate it. I hate it every time
Oh
I
yeah,
see it. I hate bad 3D. I think it actually pushes people away from it. Like it's like recently there was a story and it was kind of tongue-in-cheek version of Monster Hunter by Larry Correa, and the guy put Larry Correa, like he on the cover, but he had him drawn and in space armor, so it actually looked pretty cool. You could believe a guy with Larry Correa's face is in the military, space military, fighting the Xeno scum, which is his true and heroic duty. um, but a lot of people, they're like, oh, I just let the publisher, take care of it or whatever. And it's like, sure, sometimes you get away with it. John C. Wright's Count to Eschaton series gets away with it because it's just really cool spaceships. And by the time you're in book number 4 or whatever, you're just along for the ride. You're going to finish this thing anyway. So the cover's important, but it's not as important at that time. But it's like I just got through fighting with a cover artist for about a year, where like it's ironic, she claimed personal grief, but then um, is like but like the book is about dealing with personal grief. So she didn't read the book, but that's okay. Where it's like now it's there, but it looks great. Jason Rennie is moving it around a little bit so it fits on the book better. And it's gonna look perfect. It's gonna look exactly like it needs to. And
yeah.
your books, your covers look exactly what like they need to. They're fantastic art.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I have no idea what's going on, but it's the right type of radical. If there wasn't like some sort of Captain Ahab character with a spear jabbing at the spider squid, I couldn't be more excited. But it's still it's an art form that really needs to be respected. It's like how book plates. It's like having a personal book plate is something that's quite important if you're, like a next tier, a patrician book lover, because then it's something about you, something interesting, something dramatic. It's a look into your mindset and your sort of internal creativity, and then the book covers is no less a marker of that. One of the things that I guess the Foglios, the Girl Genius people, have been quite lucky with is that they are artistic people with an excellent colorist as their best friend. Um, so their book covers are always 10 out of 10. Your Cirsova book covers, just looking at here, I've got the spring issue and the summer special. Both book covers are absolute 10 out of 10s. Like, you always have fantastic covers, whether it's the guy who was standing on top of the ship casting a giant spell, or Tarzan waking up. Actually, I'll put a little. I'm gonna cut this down, put it up here. Nope, stop. There we go. Huh. It's like, look at, like, you can't really see. It's not good. I don't have a good camera here, but it's like, oh, look at it. It looks like a Tarzan book. You know exactly what's going to go on here. You don't even need the title. If you look at it, there's some dude in a loincloth and in a jungle, and there's some sort of ghost woman standing over him. Like, that doesn't require any more description. There's mystery and adventure and all that stuff already wrapped up into it, and it's really speaks highly towards your own work when you do have. I'm going to open up one last cover here. When you do have covers of such fine quality, um, that these things, that these things speak so well of it.
Yeah, one of the things that we have never skimped on, cover art. We've always wanted to make Cirsova and all of Cirsova books just the most amazing, professional looking that we possibly could put out there. There are so many cheaper ways of doing it, ways to get around it, but you see and feel those cheapness. There are a few anthologies that get passed around in circles, I know, that get laughed at because of the bad art. You have the really bad photoshops of the models, the clashing colors, the bad fonts, and yeah, those are cheap, but they look cheap. So
Yep.
we've never spared the expense on making Cirsova look good, and we are super lucky to have Anton Oksana for our current cover artist, and he will be doing the cover art for the omnibus. We have a hardcover omnibus that's going to have all 700 odd pages of all 4 volumes of Wild Stars, and it's going to have a wraparound cover by Anton. You guys know how good his stuff is. You've seen it.
Oh, absolutely. Partially, I buy the physical copies of Cirsova so I could look at the covers and just like sort of just go like, yeah, you know, like, I've got 400 odd books on my reading list, but it's on there. But then again, I've bought them. As strange as it is to say, it doesn't matter. Like, what's that one meme where it's like the Starship Troopers person, and she goes, "I've done my part."
Yeah.
The even if you don't have time, if you've got $10, $20, and you just want to check it out, buy number 4 because it's got kind of that overview of the plot, and decide, what, I like this style, I'll get more, or no, you know what. I bought this. It looks good on the shelf, but maybe I don't want it. It doesn't matter. Like, supporting the artists is itself an art unto itself.
And
Hmm?
another reason why 4 might be a good place to start is we've got an extensive setting glossary that we had Michael put together. So
Ooh.
all the characters, all the places, all the spaceships, all the planets all have their own entries in the back of this. And this ties into something else cool that's going on. Recently, Chanel and Gray and Troll Lord Games successfully crowdfunded a 5e modern system, and one of the stretch goals that they met for it was a Wild Stars 5e RPG setting. So there will be a Wild Stars RPG product on the market soon from another publisher, but if you want to get a head start on it, Wild Stars 4's glossary will have everything you need to know, especially if you're the sort of person who likes to just come up with your own stuff on the fly for your system without having to use actual supplements. It's all there in the glossary for you.
Absolutely. And with the routes that Vampire the Masquerade and Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot, are taking, with some social justice, some just bad mechanics, it's sort of taking a lot of the life out of the game, to the point where, last time I played D&D, the only way I kept myself entertained was by eating the unfortunate goblin guards who tried to ambush us. um I was playing a lizard man, so it wasn't as crazy as all that. But it's like a lot of the spirit and the imagination just isn't there. And because, I never really did it as a child, unlike some authors like John C. Wright, etc., who take a lot from um, their role-playing experience, I just don't have that. So I'm hoping that, stuff like your Wild Stars, and other, new, sort of new stars in the sort of, I don't know how to say it, the grand role playing Ori. Sure, that works. If you know what an Ori is. Um, can really, breathe new life to it, and perhaps even put a kindle of fire into my jaded soul, um, such as it is. One can always hope.
Yeah.
I do know that there is a couple cyberpunk games I'm keeping half an eye on, but sadly they don't seem to be going anywhere, um, like they should. Especially one based on Tsutomu Nihei's Blame universe. But then again, that's kind of obscure, so who knows? Let's see. So you've got a. Is there a link to that actually?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
Because I just
Yeah.
realized I should probably put up a link for you. Mm-hmm. I agree to the terms and service. Do I want to use Google's products? No, I do not. Thank you.
All right. I've dropped it in the group chat. You might need to be the one who copies it over to the live chat.
I will be. Whoop. I am yet to be important enough to magically spawn a moderator. Though, let's see here. Amazing Adventures 5e. Excellent. Yeah. And is he in the pulp sort of thing?
Who, Michael?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He is a huge pulp aficionado. He is an Edgar Rice Burroughs scholar. He has a fantastic collection of Tarzan and Princess of Mars stuff, including original pulps.
Oh.
Last year, about the same time we put out Wild Stars 3, he put out a 4-volume art chronology that included all of the art from just about everything that Burroughs has done from the pulp days up to the modern comics, and that was a huge seller for him.
What's the name of that?
The Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-Year Art Chronology.
Is that on Amazon?
It might be. It might also be very expensive. I know that it was a limited print run. It was very expensive to begin with. It's sold out. It's highly sought after. So
yeah, it actually pops up in my bar.
Huh. It's hardcore fans only, but I've had a chance to look through it, and oh my gosh, it is impressive.
and it is like $200. It's like,
Yeah.
but it looks absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna put that on a wish list for when I'm rich. Uh, hopefully, wink, wink, on book sales, but also on wink, wink, gym money. But that doesn't, whatever. I don't drink anyway. But that doesn't, that's for later. You want to keep these goals in mind for when fortune favors you. But right now, I'm going to take a deep dive on the $20 WS4 Wild Star Rising Indiegogo thingamajig. And I'll look forward to when you guys ship. When are you guys going to ship this stuff out?
We are planning on getting it out in October. Normally, we've been closer to ready to ship in the past, but this has been just such a huge project. There's still stuff that needs to be finished, still stuff that needs to be paid for and laid out. We
Mm-hmm.
have all of the interiors done. We finally have all of the cover stuff in from Mark. He's, I think, going to be doing some finishing touches on some layout stuff, but once we get that ready to go, we'll be able to get them uploaded to the printer, get some proofs in. But we wanted to give ourselves enough time to actually have some cushion and get stuff out without being late, because there's so many late projects these days,
Yep.
and I'm so tired of late being considered on time because late is the status quo.
Right. I will say this about Brian Niemeyer's stuff. It's always excellent, and it is always with on time. Uh, much more than, and some might say anyway. Um, I actually can't recall. Like the thing is that like I'm bad with dates. Like I kind of keep my live stream stuff on like a calendar and like always refreshing in my head. Um, Not that I worry about it or anything like that. I just try to be able to remember it whenever I think about it. Like I'm going to have Bradford Walker soon, and he just released his. Sadly, his book was late because of medical issues that he is thankfully out of the hospital from, at least last time I heard.
Yeah.
Um, he's sort of there. StarQuest is proceeding apace, but John C. Wright had a huge sort of. I bought all four covers, physical edition. That was $80 well spent. Uh, he's got his books moving along. I'm on a live stream with him because I also pay to his Patreon. Have you thought about a Cirsova Patreon? Do
I
you have
have
one already?
Well, I have an account, but I do not have anything set up for Patreons yet.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's something I might look into, but it's felt to me like e-begging, especially since I don't have stuff that I could put up as regular patron content.
Right.
I mean, if I had regular patron content, it would be one thing, but really, if you want to support us, the best way to do it is buy the books. If
Right.
you've already bought the books, buy the books for somebody else. Then once we get to the point where everybody has bought the books and is buying the books for somebody else and still want to give us money, then hit us up. We'll figure something out.
Well, you could always. I know that you. Let's just take a look at this one real quick. It looks like you've got in the spring 2019 issue. Uh, you've got one, two, three, four. Looks like about 12 stories in it. Looks to
Yeah.
be about. You could always put that forward as rewards for the patron. Like not all the stories, of course, just until it's released. Like let's say the $5 a month. But then again, that doesn't boost you in the Amazon ratings.
Yeah. Well, another funny thing that we've learned is that Amazon rankings are not all that. We managed to get a few titles up into the top 100s of their categories. Never had the algorithm kick in because I hear that they have nerfed the algorithm.
Which is so weird, especially since like you have Galaxy's Edge, which hit that Schwerpunkt just right, just threaded the needle. But then and Richard Fox as well, and Four Horsemen, they just hit it right. But then it's like the rest of it, I don't really know. Like, what's coming up in my feed all the time? Harem fiction, monster girls, fairies, uh, cyborg, something or others, where the main girl in the harem's called War Bitch and is thoroughly unpleasant because I read them on occasion, mostly to see what's popular. And it's like I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at like a John C. Wright novel, which is like 10,000 at best on release or something like that, despite him being very top tier in sheer writing ability. And then all of a sudden there's like Monster Girl Harem #7, and it's like 4,820 overall, and it's like I'm just sort of like laying back, just kind of staring at the wall. It's like, you know what, I'm going to resist this, but it's getting harder every time I hear about it.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too is that Amazon has been pushing sponsored content a lot harder. So anything that would be bumped by the algorithm under other circumstances is probably getting buried under sponsored content, because you're getting all the stuff that's up at the top. You're getting 2 or 3 things sponsored in the first result. Then you might get what you're actually searching for, and then below what you were actually searching for, you get more sponsored stuff, and then after the second batch of sponsored stuff, you might get related stuff that might be similar to your interests. And it's just such a mess now.
It is. It really is. And it's like I dig the whole money thing. And it's like some people are talking about Alibaba. I've talked about it. And it's like I don't think the Chinese market is going to be any better, their version of Amazon, except it's going to be party approved, perhaps. Though I bet their algorithm is far more janky if it's not outright stolen. But it's like
I don't trust Alibaba.
No, everyone's a fool to trust the Chinese for anything other than to serve the Chinese. Their god is money, and Xi Jinping I think that's his name, is basically purging his own party to try and put a stop to it, because it is drastically hurting. The widespread looting is hurting their business and economies and stuff like that. They might be a superpower, but they're not going to last long if they don't find a moral center. But more on topic. Have you heard of Red Rabbit Presents?
I have not heard of Red Rabbit Presents.
It was a anthology. I think it was originally intended to be quarterly, but I haven't really found much about it. It's an excellent little book. It only had 4 stories in it, one by Nick Cole, which was pretty okay for a Nick Cole story. But then it had an amazing couple of other stories by mid-tier, at least, writers. Including one which I liked, which is about humans using technology to discover each other in essentially a customs vessel. Quite fascinating. But like when I looked to search for it, because I wanted to see how well or badly it was doing, there was a full page of Tom Clancy books. Tom Clancy is dead. No one's writing Tom Clancy books, but apparently Tom Clancy. He is dead, isn't he?
His name is licensed.
Yes. And that's probably.
If you see any Rainbow Six books, like all but like maybe one of the Rainbow Six books are by other guys besides Tom Clancy's, but they get to put Tom Clancy's name on the book because they bought his name.
Right. And don't get me wrong, like that's pretty intelligent if you're somebody who doesn't, care too much about what they put out. But it's still like it's one of those things that kind of didn't get me mad or anything like that, but it was like I had to like struggle with the advertisements and stuff like that to find this dinky little anthology of high quality that really deserves far more love than it ever got. And with everything else, I don't know. I think what will happen is we'll see an implosion of some kind, and then it'll once after the dark times, before the Empire. then it'll all coalesce again, and it'll probably be Wild West again, and that sounds really nice. But who knows? I think that's part of the joy of it.
Yeah.
When's the next Cirsova mag coming out?
We're planning on having it out in mid-September. I don't know if we were live when I said, but we've got the art in, we've got all the stories in, we're getting the advertisements in. It should be available for pre-order pretty soon.
Outstanding! I can't wait to see that link on my feed, or make sure you send it to me, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it. I need to do I've been neglecting my video projects for a bit, but I need to get back on that and talk about Cirsova and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Superversive books and everything else, because I do believe that Nick Cole and Jason Ansbach know what they're talking about, but I have no idea how to apply it in my advertising daily life. So hopefully this one catches on as one does. I also absolutely. So let's see here. When's the next batch of submissions going to open up?
We're looking at mid-October. You can find our submissions guidelines and our submission window on cirsova.wordpress.com. And we're only looking at about a 2-week submissions period this time, because when we were open for a month, we got just so many stories. I mean, they were really good stories, but we were we were having to turn away so many good stories that it was just like,
you turned me away, which I don't mind at all.
Yeah, every story we got after a certain point was, okay, what story or 2 stories will this bump off if we end up buying it? So there was just so many things that were on the bubble, off the bubble, back on the bubble, and things that's like, if we had the money, we absolutely would have run with. There were a lot of things that were just so good, but we decided we would rather focus on 2 weeks getting really good stories and not have to have 2 weeks after that of crying over what stories we couldn't buy.
Right.
Because we're still probably going to be stuck in a situation where we got way more cool stuff than we can buy.
Absolutely. Just for anyone interested, I sent in Beverly Hills Nephilim. Though to be fair, this is sort of like expanding out in my mind into its own novel series about like a lot of the time, monster hunters tend to be Catholic or some form of the author doesn't actually want to reveal his spiritual beliefs. I do not say agnostic or atheist. I say it exactly the way I meant it. And I decided I want to try the Protestant take on the monster hunter, which will involve him, a lot dying, receiving his commission as a way of redemption, and then waking up to find this black pastor he saved in the New Orleans bayou burning all his clothes. Why are you burning all my clothes? It's nothing. The Catholics they get weird whenever you come back from the dead, and we don't want any relic hunters following you around here. And which will lead into all sorts of hilarity, with a lot of humor pointed at both sides. Though I will be more than happy to try my luck again the second I hear you're open. Because there's nothing like sending in stories to magazines and stuff like that. Though, admittedly, I kind of tailor make my stories for each magazine I send them into, because I don't really write short stories like other people do. Let's see here. Solomon Kane. Oh, you're absolutely right. Solomon Kane is basically the Protestant monster hunter, though I'm sure I have just given John C. Wright and others an involuntary spasm, though they do not know why. Let's see here. Well, we've almost been streaming an hour. Do you have anything you'd like to talk about before we part ways?
I think we've covered just about everything. We just really, really need to get some support in for Wild Stars.
Absolutely. I myself I'm looking forward to the Wild Star Rising uh, um, thing I bought. There we go. Is this a soft cover or hard cover? Out of curiosity.
It's going to be soft cover. They're
Outstanding.
they're going to be done in the same format and size as Cirsova's normal magazine, so they'll match on your shelf. Which is another
Ooh.
thing about Wild Stars 1, because that means that we're actually blowing up the comic art. It'll be a little bit bigger than
Yeah.
it was originally in
And
the smaller graphic novel versions.
absolutely. There's like looking at it, like I'm looking at all my Cirsova mags, same cover size. All my Bane books have the same book size. All my Superversive Press mostly have the same book size, and it looks so fine on the shelf. And that is very important in these um, strange times we live in.
These are going to look good on your shelf, believe me.
Oh, I absolutely can't wait. Thank you for joining us today, Cirsova. It is always a pleasure when you come along and talk to me, and when you release your, I'd say winter mag. Let's say, but you are doing a winter one, right?
Right now, we are just doing spring with a summer special and a fall. We don't have a winter one planned. We'll be back again in the spring after September.
Let's see, just a second. Absolutely. I'm just putting the link back into the chat. Thank you, Woolly Ram, for the shilling. It's always appreciated. Well, then, I will certainly see you again when you're ready to do the spring magazine for 2020, I guess. I always look forward to it, if only to buy it. Though I do try to
Appreciate
read
it a
it on
lot.
occasion. What a strange times we live in. Though when I die, I expect the kids to fight tooth and nail over the library. Thank you all for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to do these live streams, and I wish you all a good week. Goodbye.